What's up, Jets fans, and welcome to episode 15 of JetNation Live. I am your host, Dylan Tereman. I will be joined by Glenn Naughton shortly. I will take it solo for now until we get him in the studio here. Coming to you on a Friday night instead of a Thursday night. I know it's a bit of a switch up from our usual schedule. I was stuck in a bit of weather and traffic on the way home yesterday, so we had to postpone till tonight. And fortunately for us, the news dictated it in a way where that was a good thing for us. So instead of coming on here yesterday and talking all night about how we hope Mike White can tough out this rib injury and hopefully beat the Detroit Lions, now we have confirmation that the doctors of the New York Jets would not clear Mike White for the game on Sunday. It was provided to us that he has sought the opinion of multiple doctors trying to clear him for contact. That's not the case. He's out this week. Instead, Zach Wilson, who was quarterback 3 on Sunday, then promoted to quarterback 2, he will be the quarterback 1 for the Lions game this Sunday. Obviously, first and foremost, I think the promotion of quarterback 3 to quarterback 2 with Zach Wilson was not due to anything Zach Wilson did at practice over the last 3 weeks since he's been out. I think that was solely because Joe Flacco looked atrocious in his short stint in the ball game against the Buffalo Bills. Mike White came out of that game twice due to multiple rib injuries. Turns out they are fractured indeed, multiple fractures in the same area underneath his pec area he pointed to during his press conference. But Joe Flacco looked very bad. Could hardly even stand in the pocket. He was barely even getting to the back of his drops, and it looked like he had already given up on the play. So Zach Wilson was promoted from QB3 to quarterback 2, and now with this rib injury, he is propelled up into quarterback 1. From my personal standpoint, I hope that this is just a one-game show for Zach Wilson, and good or bad, I hope that they truly make it a competition moving forward. I think everything we've seen Mike White do, even just battling back from the 2 rib injuries to throw for 268 yards. I know he didn't throw for a touchdown, but he did have the 1-yard rushing touchdown on the afternoon against Buffalo. So he absolutely toughed it out. Saul even said he's an absolute warrior. So I hope this isn't the last of Mike White. But again, getting back to Zach Wilson, I think that this is his moment. And I understand it's arguably every Jets fan has been frustrated with Zach Wilson at some point this season, myself included. I've given him a ton of flack. I'm not going to pull out old narratives about Zach just because he was performing poorly, but his benching was well warranted. And like I said just before, I don't think that his QB1 promotion is necessarily warranted either. I think it's a coincidental circumstance that puts him back in this situation, and hopefully he can make the best of it. I didn't want to be like too hyperbolic or sarcastic, but after watching Brock Purdy last night for the San Francisco 49ers play against the Seattle Seahawks, it made me believe that any quarterback could do it in this system. The LaFleur system is hand in hand the Kyle Shanahan system. Obviously, there's a couple of tweaks here and there, but if you can get Zach Wilson to just play like Brock Purdy did last night, where he threw for 217 yards on 26 attempts and had 2 touchdowns, I mean, I think every Jets fan would be over the moon excited. Now, will that result in a win? I'm not sure. I think that will result in the win if he were to put up that stat line against the Detroit Lions this weekend. But Zach Wilson, obviously, he has his opportunity. We're going to see if he can make the most of it. Perhaps it is his job moving forward now. There is the possibility, I should say. Rich Cimini put out the tweet earlier that there's the possibility that Mike White could have an injury to the point where if he takes another hit, he will suffer internal damage. And if that is the case, it would be a 3 to 5 week injury for Mike White. Obviously, that would put him out for the remainder of the regular season, you would assume. So it would be Zach Wilson's job from there on out. But I hope that Mike White can come back and at least make it a competition, because I do believe he gives the Jets the best chance moving forward to beat the teams that are on the schedule, the Lions, the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the Jaguars included on a short week. So I do see Glenn in the studio. I'm going to give him a second to set up here. Just give me the thumbs up, Glenn, when you're ready, and then we'll bring him on. All right, he's ready. Glenn, how we doing? Can you hear me?
Oh, good, good. How are you, Dylan?
Think you're muted there still.
Am I? Let me see.
But all right, he'll be right back with us. But anyway, I think if Zach Wilson were to go out and play even pedestrian like he has in some of the other wins this season, Green Bay, Miami, I think that would be enough to earn him the job. But it's going to be a collective effort, and I think now more than ever we're going to see relying on the run game, which Glenn and I will talk about because he had his concerns as well with this offensive line and the shape that it is. I don't know if we can sustain how good the running back group is because the running backs have proven that you can kind of find one anywhere. Zonovan Knight has boomed onto the scene the past 3 weeks. So if they can just get some confidence in the offensive line and the run game, I think that would go a long way to helping Zach Wilson, not putting it all on his shoulders. We saw Mike White have a ton of dropbacks in his outings. I believe it was 44 and 57 the past 2 weeks. So you don't want to see Zach Wilson averaging 50 attempts, which kind of seems to be the norm when he's not the quarterback. Flacco averaged 51 and a half dropbacks, and then Mike White having 100 dropbacks over the past 2 games is just not a good formula for when Zach Wilson is the quarterback. We're going to do a take 2 with Glenn here, see if you can get him in here. How about now, Glenn? Gotcha?
We good? You hear me?
No, unfortunately, we didn't
No.
Glenn this time.
1 second.
As he's trying to figure it out, we are going to transition that into Bam Knight. He did get the start over Michael Carter. He was the leading back by far on the day. He had 17 carries to Michael Carter's 5. He ended the day with 17 carries for 71 yards and 1 touchdown. Michael Carter ended the day with 5 carries for 5 yards and a very costly fumble. I think that fumble kind of cost the Jets the game. I know Joe Flacco had another turnover, but I think that they were able to overcome the Joe Flacco turnover when he came in, and the Michael Carter coughing it up at the 25-yard line turnover was the one that really put the Jets out of the game. They were driving. They were able to get down into the scoring position twice at the end of that game there with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So they were able to make it a game. I have a couple questions for Glenn when we can get him on here, but I'm going to keep chugging along with my game recap. Garrett Wilson, another monstrous game. Spectacular sideline catches. He took a big shot on one of them. He actually passed Keyshawn Johnson for most rookie receiving yards for the Jets. And I checked this morning. He has the best odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. The names that are behind him, Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers at plus 300, Chris Olave at plus 400, wide receiver for the Saints. And then Kenneth Walker, the third, the running back for the Seahawks, is plus 450.
Any good?
All those guys are plus 300 or worse, and Garrett Wilson sits there at plus 160. So it seems right now that Garrett Wilson is going to at least be the odds-on favorite for the rest of the season for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Granted, he continues doing what he's doing with Zach Wilson. Elijah Moore, the other wide receiver on the Jets, he had a team high and I believe a game high 10 targets, 6 catches, 60 yards. That puts him up to 16 targets in the last 2 games. And Robert Saleh had nothing but good things to say about him in his press conference this week. He said that he's hitting a record high on his GPS numbers, some of the highest numbers he's hit since training camp back in August. So
any good?
I think Elijah Moore has well put that trade request behind him, and he's ready to move on and just be a part of this team, more or less, so to speak. And he, regardless of the outcome, he's going to go out there and just give it his best effort. And you like to see that from Elijah Moore. And I think it's paying off. Obviously, with Mike White, he was able to be more involved in this offense. And now with Zach Wilson, we hope that he can continue on that trajectory. I personally hope he gets more time than Braxton Berrios, even though Berrios did have a crucial 3rd down catch in the ball game down the right sideline. I am going to flip it over to the defense real quick while we still get Glenn. How about now? Can we try you now, or we got nothing?
What do you think? Anything?
No, can't hear you yet.
All
right, that's all right. We'll keep chugging along. The defense, they made Josh Allen kind of look like Kirk Cousins last week. Kirk Cousins struggled to start the game. When the Jets played Minnesota, he was airing passes over his receivers' heads. I believe he started 0 for 5, 0 for 6 2 weeks ago against the Jets defense. And Josh Allen kind of started the same. Oh, you guys are able to hear Glenn. Okay, hold on. Let's get him back in here then. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. All right. Glenn, the chat is telling me that it's me that cannot hear you and they can. So.
Can you hear me now?
Maybe it's my fault. And it seems like that's the problem. All right. Well, I am going to throw it to you real quick. Just give your recap. You heard what I said about the offense, and I started going on the defense. So just give your full offensive take about the Bills game, because, and obviously the quarterback situation at the top that I discussed, Zach and Mike White.
Yeah, listen, sorry for the screw ups here. I got on a few minutes late, kind of causing all this. But listen, the Zach situation, I almost tweeted out the other day once he got elevated to the number 2 spot. I almost said, listen, I think because this is the Jets, like, he is going to see the field at some point. My expectation was that Mike White would start, because he sounded confident he would start. The Jets sounded confident he would start. And now it sounds like, it comes out that he was in worse shape than they thought he was. The ribs are broken. They didn't think that was the case. So my expectation was he's going to take a hit during that game that's going to knock him out, and Zach Wilson's going to see the field. That ends up being, that not even getting that far. I can't believe Zach Wilson's back in. I understand that. I see the good side of it, the reps. Let's see if he's come along. But I feel like the season's done. I don't, unless Zach Wilson has made this sort of miraculous, never before seen turnaround from an NFL football player, from completely ineffective to being able to win games. And again, he went 5-2. Look, the Jets went 5-2. Zach Wilson was very bad most of those games. Even the most ardent Zach Wilson supporters, the only thing they can reference this year is, but the fourth quarter against Pittsburgh. Yeah, but that fourth quarter, like how many times can you reference 12 minutes of play as a reason why the guy should be why the season should hinge on his play? Like, he has been bad and often very bad. And if you're honest with yourself, somebody was saying to me the other day, I said, look, like, tell me all the great moments he's had in 20 career games. And you can name like 3 or 4. Like, he had a good start against Tennessee last year. He had a good start against the Bucks. He had a good start against the Eagles. He had the fourth quarter against Pittsburgh this year. All right, so every 5th game he looks okay. Like, and this is like, oh yeah, what do you how can you bench this guy? Like, almost 20% of the time he looks like a suitable NFL quarterback. It's ugly. I expect him to be bad. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm dead wrong. I hope the guy comes out and throws 5 touchdown passes, and I go, oh, well, there you go. So I think that I think he's, and this is, I said this as soon as it happened. When I did a really brief article on Zach Wilson moving up again, I specifically said that this is Joe Flacco fumbling away the backup job. This isn't Zach Wilson doing so well that he gets elevated. This is the Jets watching Joe Flacco potentially cost them that game on Sunday and saying, we can't put him on the field anymore. So Joe Flacco was that bad that Zach Wilson gets moved up. The game itself, I mean, not a lot to say, heartbreaking loss. Even though, we said before, I expected them to lose the game. I did. But man, that defense played great again. Like, I think they were even better this time. Well, I mean, last time they forced more turnovers, but and that, that's another big difference. I see everybody, Zach beat the Bills, Mike White didn't. Like, yeah, the defense forced 2 turnovers and sacked Josh. Like, the defense was much better last time. By any objective measure, Mike White was a better quarterback against the Bills. And look at the conditions Mike White was playing in. Like, that's the other thing.
Yep.
Mike White is, playing in this driving rain, ice cold, and outplayed Zach Wilson. And because the defense played better last time, I got to hear that, look, Mike White didn't beat them and Zach Wilson could. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, and just going back to what Salah was saying about Zach Wilson. When you have to reference that he went 18 for 18 in a bowl game after he's played 20 something odd games in the NFL, I think that's like, you're kind of clutching at straws at what this kid can potentially be. I mean, I don't know if I'm like as pessimistic going forward with Zach Wilson, but like I certainly looked at that tweet this morning when it came down from Adam Schefter, and I was like, I don't know if he's going to even lead us to a wild card game at this point. Like we're already at must-win territory, and we're going to get into the playoff picture. And I said the magic number was three out of 4 wins, but now with Zach Wilson at the helm, I don't know if 3 is even achievable. I mean, I know Seattle didn't play very well last night, but Detroit is very hot. Jacksonville is very hot. Miami is in a little bit of a funk, but they're still Miami, a divisional foe on the road last week of the season. If they know the Jets have to win to get in, they're going to play with like way extra momentum to stop us, especially after beating them by 23 points last time. So I think it's like never a dull moment, which is crazy to think we're 7-6 and we're, riding a high at this moment. And then all of a sudden, you just come crashing back down. But I think we'd be like not doing our job if we didn't say Mike White is a hell of a competitor. I mean, I think he gave it every opportunity, like every like ounce of like blood in him to try to play. And I think he said 10 doctors he went to, couldn't get clearance for contact, which understandably so when you have multiple cracked ribs in the area of your heart, lungs, and all that. So it's a risky situation. And obviously you commend him for not wanting to lose his job to injury again to the Buffalo Bills, but it is what it is.
That raises another question about him.
Exactly. And like I was saying before you came on, I hope at a minimum next week, regardless of what happens, I know it's a short week and Mike White, 3 extra days might not make a huge difference for Mike White, but I hope at a minimum, it's let's make it a competition week to week and whoever gives us the best chance moving forward, because I truly believe it is Mike White moving forward. And I saw somebody in the chat here ask about Chris Streveler, if he's going to be the quarterback 2. I believe it was Costello came out already and said that Joe Flacco is the number 2 this week. I completely disagree with it. I think you got to at least give Streveler a look, but I also think that I'm sorry, what?
No, okay. I was saying I saw that.
I was going to say, I also think that your backup quarterback should have a mirrored skill set to your starting quarterback in a sense. I look at Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley. They're both mobile quarterbacks. They don't have to completely scratch the offense when the backup comes in. With Joe Flacco, all that RPO game and it's all 5-step drops or 3-step drops out of shotgun, and you're really not getting too much out of him. And he's going to give a couple like YOLO balls down deep to Garrett Wilson because he doesn't really care. So I at least give Streveler the opportunity to, break the pocket in this situation. We're going up against a formidable front 4 with Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, and Julian Okwara on the front 4 for the Detroit Lions. So just give them a more athletic upside. That's always been my thing. So I feel like Flacco needs to go back to street clothes. And obviously Mike White's injury might, if he's healthy in a week or two, maybe Joe Flacco is wearing street clothes again. And it is just him and Zach. But for now, we have Zach.
Crazy. It's crazy, as someone just said in the comments, that William Justice here saying that White went to the hospital to get checked out to make sure it was okay to fly, and they gave him the green light. I mean, that I would guess, I could be wrong, but I would guess that was more. You mentioned about the vital organs. I would imagine that's to check that there's not a punctured lung, because you don't want to fly with having a punctured lung, right? Because of, with the elevation, you're going to get expansion, so that's going to be a pretty painful situation. So they probably focused more on the lung than the ribs, and obviously missed it. They could be hairline, they could be, it could be smaller fractures, but obviously there were. I couldn't believe it. I mean, you just watch that shot enough times over, and I'm like, you literally bent that dude in half at the waist with a shoulder to the ribs, and nothing. You didn't. So it's kind of. It was surprising they weren't broken, and when you hear they are, you're like, well, I'm kind of, I wish we'd have known sooner. So you know what's going on, but just a weird situation all around.
Yeah, and I had the tweet here. I believe it was Samini or Kaz tweeted it out, but when he went to the hospital in Buffalo after the game, they only gave him x-rays on his chest. So I assume that was to see any like major fractures or whatever, just to check him for the plane. Yeah. When he got back, I guess they did CT scans, and that was right. Because it was a hairline, like you were saying, type of fracture. I don't know the proper medical term for it. So it was a hairline fracture.
Hairline.
I'm sorry?
It was or was not hairline?
They said that it was similar to a hairline. I don't know the
Okay.
exact. Yeah, so it was something only the CT scan could find and not the X-ray. So that would kind of give it. I know. And Rob Saleh even was asked about it when he said his doctors didn't give him clearance, but he was seeking other opinions. Somebody asked if that was okay, if like that was like normal in the NFL world, and I was glad that that question was asked because Saleh elaborated a little bit about it, and he said no, like for the player safety aspect of it, we condone as many opinions as possible. Go out and find what you want. Obviously, you know, you don't want to
Mhm.
just hear what you want to hear, but it's
Right.
nice to know that it's not just the Jets doctor saying one thing and like that's you know it and that's case closed. So I'm glad that they're able to at least seek their own medical opinions, and I'm glad Saul was able to elaborate a little bit on that one. Um, your thoughts on the defense? I have a couple notes here, but I want to hear your thoughts first before I kick it off because I know you said they were playing really well. So
Yeah, look, they were fantastic. I know all of us, like, saw the season, circling the drain when Quinnen Williams went down. He thought, well, that's it. Because, I've said many times on this show, this defense is about Quinnen and the corners. I mean, they have a lot of good players, don't get me wrong, but the pressure they're able to generate up front is due to a lot to the fact that Quinnen is in there and he's taking on double teams, he's taking on triple teams in some cases. Like he's the guy that makes it all possible. And it's that penetration that makes quarterbacks have to hurry their throws a little bit and guys are covered. So really that scared the hell out of me. Um, Now he's what they're saying he's 50-50 last I heard
mhm.
for Sunday. I can't imagine he won't go. I think maybe if things get ugly. I mean, look, now you're talking Zach Wilson against the Lions. It's going to be a fun matchup because the Lions have one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL, which is crazy to think with Jared Goff at quarterback. Like he was so bad for the last couple of years, and now all of a sudden they're sort of a top 4, top 5 offense, I believe, at least over the last sort of 10 weeks.
Mhm.
So if Detroit opens up any type of lead, I wonder if they just pull Quinn in and say, "All right, we're going to sit you now." But I'd be really surprised if he doesn't go. Like they need him, and if he can be, at 70%, I think they'll take him at 70% for the day. But overall, the defense was fantastic. And that's what made it that much more frustrating. Sauce and Reed, of course, doing a hell of a job on those Buffalo receivers. Keep it Diggs held to a career low in receiving, and even the big catch he had was against Whitehead. He
Yeah.
had 40 some yards on the day. He had a 34 yarder. They lined him up in the slot, and he ran away from Whitehead for a
Yeah, I didn't
34-yard
understand
gain.
that.
So, what's that?
I didn't understand why they had Whitehead on him on that play.
I,
It was an
I
unusual look for them.
it was, and every now and then you get caught. Like the offense does a nice job of creating a mismatch, and that's what Buffalo did. And really, outside of that play, Diggs was invisible. And really, um, if you take it, so Diggs has had, he's got 75 yards on 2 catches against the Jets this year. The first one against them in matchup number 1. What's he done outside of 2 catches? And only one of them was against the corner, of course, which was Sauce, who bounced back after that. So they did a nice job. The pass rush looked good. I thought Huff looked really nice coming off the edge. He usually does, but he did a really good job there. So another really stellar effort from the defense that unfortunately kind of went to waste.
Yeah, and I know that Josh Allen is no longer the odds-on favorite to win MVP this season, but he is top 3 or 4. I believe Jalen Hurts is first, and the Jets made it look like that guy shouldn't even be in the conversation both times that they've played. I know he got the better of them on the ground, and he scored, I believe, 3 rushing touchdowns in the 2 games against them. So, but through the air, Josh Allen was 16 of 27 for 147 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. He was kind of like I mentioned it right at the top. He kind of looked like Kirk Cousins against the Vikings. He was throwing passes a little errant, and the pressure was really affecting him early on. And I think that that's why they started settling down and making him run a little bit more. His rushing touchdown was really easy, and I felt like the Jets kind of gave up on that one. But you mentioned it, Sauce at the top. He had 2 targets, 1 catch for 6 yards, so he really wasn't doing anything. Whether it was Diggs, Davis, anybody they lined up, McKenzie. He actually had a really nice sideline to sideline chase down on Isaiah McKenzie on a end around play where it looked like if it wasn't Sauce, it was probably going to be a touchdown. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad that Sauce was able to get on his high horses. His long strides. He just covers so much ground so quickly. He was able to minimize the gain there.
Yep.
Quinnen Williams, obviously 2 sacks in the first quarter. He's now up to 11 sacks, first double-digit sack guy since Muhammad Wilkerson for the Jets, first interior double-digit sack guy since 5 years before I was born. So good for Quinnen Williams on getting those my lifetime milestones. I'm starting to see new names in the
best
record books.
performance you've seen.
Exactly. It's a good thing for once for the Jets to have new names in the record book. But you mentioned it. It was a calf injury, and it looked like an ACL. It was a non-contact. He was just moving from right to left on the line.
Man, I was freaking out.
I was so scared. He was able to walk off, but it was gingerly.
Yeah,
and
walking off doesn't matter, man. We've seen enough. Like I said,
Yep.
I was at, what was it, Baltimore, whichever game it was when Gino did his, and I
Mhm.
watched him walk off and walk back to the train. He looked absolutely
Yep.
fine. I was like, okay, whatever he did, it's not that bad. He's walking, no limp, didn't look slow. He looked slow, and then he looked like bummed out that he was hurt.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, he'll be back in a few series. Like, nope, out for the year. I was like, something about seeing it up close, like watching the guy walk past you. Like, I was like field level. I just see him walk right past me and walk into the. I'm like, oh, well, he's okay. And so now, whenever I hear that, whenever
He'll be right back
broadcast
out,
like,
yeah.
oh, he's walking off under his own power, I'm like, don't care. You drop to the turf with no contact until you hear word from the doctor or the team. I'm assuming you're done for the year.
Exactly. And luckily, that's not the case for Quinnen Williams. Like you said, he is 50-50 to play.
Yes.
He did not participate in any practice session this week. I know they still have a walkthrough type practice tomorrow, so he could just go through the walkthrough or whatever. And Saleh did say that defensive linemen in particular don't need to practice in order to play. I don't know if that's just a little bias on him being a defensive-minded coach, but he said it, that defensive linemen don't need to practice to play. And last week, in his absence, because he did leave in the second quarter of that game, Sheldon Rankins ended up with 44 out of 59 possible snaps. So that was almost 75% snap share for Sheldon Rankins. And obviously, we didn't see this when Sheldon Rankins was down because we still had Quinnen Williams. But now that Quinnen Williams is questionable, even if he's on a slight pitch count, we're going to need a lot from Sheldon Rankins at this point. Jonathan Marshall was signed off of our practice squad. I forget what team it is, and I'm sure you probably know it. Steelers. There you go. So the Steelers have Jonathan Marshall.
I hated that. I like that.
And that makes
so
a lot
much.
of sense for them too. Oh, I hate that. I really do hate that for them. So, all right. Anyway, Jonathan Marshall's gone. We still have Tanzel Smart if we do need an option on the practice squad, but Tanzel Smart has been promoted twice. So this would be the third time if they do use it, and they would have to sign him to the 53 after that if they were to want to elevate him again. So those are all things to keep in mind. It's really tough when you have injuries like Mike White and Quinnen Williams and even Corey Davis, because the Jets play Sunday and then they have a short turnaround week to play the Jaguars on Thursday night. So Mike White's ribs might not be ready for Thursday. Quinnen Williams' calf might still be on a pitch count next Thursday. And Corey Davis in the concussion protocol could still be lingering with issues heading into that Thursday night game. So with all the injuries, I mean, it was great that they still were able to play toe-to-toe with Josh Allen and the Bills. And obviously, I think the AFC East is now too far out of reach. Obviously, miracles can happen and the Jets can end up winning the East. But I think now the focus has to be just trying to solidify one of those wild card spots. I believe it's Miami, Cincinnati, and now New England own the 3 wild card spots. So we really have to root for New England to drop a couple and Cincinnati to drop a couple. So before we get into the Lions preview, I did want to talk about the AFC playoff picture, because it is pretty important. And I say it almost every week. I don't want it to come down to this, but the Jets are now relying on help. I know Saleh said that they are in still control of their own destiny, and I don't really believe that, because a lot of things really need to happen, including a Week 18 win against Miami for that to even be the case. But right now we have 4 matchups that we're watching, as I can scroll no faster on my new computer. All right, here we go. The Bucks have to beat the Bengals. That's one matchup we're watching. The Titans have to beat the Chargers. The Raiders have to beat the Patriots. And this is why the AFC East is a long shot. The Bills have to beat the Dolphins. Obviously, the Dolphins could beat the Bills, but that means that we would have to I believe we would have to win out in that situation to come close, because Buffalo has the tiebreaker, Miami doesn't. I saw on ESPN Analytics today, New York has a 34% chance to make the playoffs with a win. and a 14% chance with a loss. They seem really low numbers, and especially the 34 with a
34
win.
seems high to me, to be honest.
Oh, you think it's high? Okay, so I wanted to
I
hear
don't. You know what? I'm so convinced they're not making it. I'm just not getting.
Yeah.
I'm just in my mind. I'm like 1% either way. It's just, you know, I don't know. I don't love it. I don't like. I don't. I understand why people say teams need help to get in, but I don't. I don't view it that way, and I never have. Like when they say teams needed help to get in the playoffs, like all that is, you're just talking about the order in which you won your games. Like you
Mhm.
need to win whether the number is 9, 10, or 11, you need to win 10 games to get in the playoffs. You need to win 10 games. Like if you didn't watch the season and I showed you the standings, you wouldn't know how many, you would just know these teams made the playoffs, and that's all that matters. Oh, but they needed this team to lose. Okay, well that's because they lost a game earlier in the year, but they won the later one. Like you win enough games to get in. You know,
Yep.
the order in which that happens, I don't care. And it's not, if that's the case, unless you go undefeated, everyone needs help at some point. So the whole backing in, and I understand. I guess needing help. I understand. It's backing it like, oh, you backed into the playoffs. Like, no, we won enough games to go to the playoffs. Like some teams did and some teams didn't, and that's all there is. Like, so it's. I understand why people say it. It's sort of one of those cliches that people just repeat, kind of like next man up. But
Mhm.
it's like, look, it's there's a reason why teams make it and why they don't. You either win enough games or you don't. But yeah, so I didn't mean to interrupt you on that one, but that thought popped into my head.
No, that's fine. And I always think that even before the season or like a couple weeks into the season, you can look at the AFC and the NFC and kind of find that magic number, whether it's going to be 9, 10, 11, and
Mhm.
know what you need to get to the wild card at a minimum. Obviously, everybody's shooting to win their division, easiest route to the playoffs. But in the back of their head, they know, all right, well, if we drop this one, we need to get to at least 9. In the NFC, maybe it might be 9 this year. But in the AFC, it could be 10. It could even be 11 for the wild card spot. So it's really tough. And obviously, yeah, you can call it relying on other teams, but yeah, you haven't done your job at the end of the day because your record should be better than it was to not be in
Yeah,
this situation. So I
those
don't
New
want
England
to.
losses, man. Those New England losses are a killer.
And I'm not even gonna say like definitively any other quarterback would have won us the games and we'd be 9-4 instead of 7-6. But it's so hard to look at back at those games and just say a competent quarterback and we'd probably still be on the inside of the playoff picture instead of 2 spots out now.
They'd be sitting pretty right now.
And Los Angeles beat Miami last week, which I mean, it was nice to see Miami lose, but it's really hard when you need the other team to lose as well. So it's kind of a catch-22 for the Jets, and it has that build-up feeling like week 18. If it's not a win and in situation, it's a win and still need help.
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel very confident about it going in there. So
No, it's not, but it's this as we've been saying all year, man, this defense is good enough that they'll keep them in games.
yep,
It's just a matter of does Zach Wilson show up and not play like the worst quarterback in the NFL?
yeah, and
That's what you're asking him to do. Don't be the worst guy in the NFL. We might win these games.
exactly, and we can use that to transition into the Lions preview here because the quarterback they are going up against, Jared Goff, has been one of the best quarterbacks in the past few weeks. I have a couple stats here about Jared Goff. So first, I'll start. The Lions are 6-7. They've won 5 out of their last 6 after starting 1-6 on the season. So they probably are one of the hottest teams from a record standpoint, just
Absolutely.
on the surface. You mentioned it, a high-powered offense. Their points in each game in the last 6: 15, 31, 31, 28, 40, and 34. And that 34 came against the Minnesota Vikings, who beat the Jets the week prior. So obviously it's a divisional opponent for them. So it's, higher stakes, but they put up 34 on Minnesota and we only put up 22. So not using that as the end all be all, but the last time the Jets played the Lions, obviously this was 2018, Sam Darnold's rookie debut. The Jets won 48-17 after the pick 6 to start from Sam Darnold. And technically, the last matchup I saw on Twitter that the Jets and the Lions had was back in February at the Senior Bowl. The Lions coached the national team and the Jets coached the American team. So it is cool to see these two teams battling it out and see how far they've come since February. I know they were only coaching college prospects at the time, but I don't know. I look at both these teams and their head coaches, Rob Saleh and Dan Campbell, respectively, and I can't picture any two teams that like go out and emulate what their head coach preaches. I see Mike White wearing shirts that say DRL, do right longer. I see the AGNBs, the all gas, no brake shirts circulating. And like, I just see every like mantra that Rob Saleh has put out there. Like the players are saying it over and over and over again. Keep the main thing the main thing. And I think it shows that Rob Saleh really has a trickle down effect on all these players. And you look at Dan Campbell, and it's kind of the same thing. Everybody clowned on him for his press conference when he first was hired, saying we're gonna bite your knees, and then we're gonna get back up, and we're gonna bite your knee again. But that's what they do. Like they genuinely do that. They're a team that just picks at you. So it is nice to see that these two teams are kind of doing a 180 from last year to this year after the Senior Bowl. And hey, maybe the Senior Bowl is that pendulum swing that teams need to just get that kick in the butt to become a better team for whatever reason. But back to Jared Goff, the quarterback opposing Zach Wilson in this game. Since week 10, Jared Goff has a TD to interception ratio of 8-0. That is second in the NFL. He has a quarterback rating of 76, which is third. Yards per dropback of 7.3, which is third. And although the Jets are one of the best teams against play action, they are a very good play action offense. So I think Jared Goff, he's an indoor quarterback. He's a Cali quarterback. You know, he hasn't really played too many cold weather games. I think similarly to how they're talking about Tua in Buffalo this week, Jared Goff could be affected by the weather in MetLife. Obviously, it's not going to be raining or snowing or anything like that, but just the cold in general could affect him. So what do you think we can do as a defense? I know we've done a great job already against all these other quarterbacks, but what is it that's going to, make us stop Jared Goff and have their run game defeat us this Sunday?
Well, that's the thing, not to beat a dead horse, but the first thing I think of when you say that the Jets have been good against play action, my first thought is, having Quinnen Williams up front and being able to cause pressure. If guys don't bite on play action, then that's something that you may not have this weekend. And the weather, I was thinking about that the other day. Like, you hope it's a factor. It's not going to be anything treacherous. It's not going to be like Buffalo with, where they're expecting a ton of snow. But Goff is just, it's one of those things. I don't even like to oversimplify it, but sometimes it's almost similar to the Bears game, where I know Jared Goff is, he's thrown 8 touchdowns. What'd you say, eight touchdowns, no picks recently.
Yep.
I still just look at him like he's not an elite guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you're going to put points up on this Jets defense, you got to be an elite guy. And I mean points. I mean, 28,
Right.
35 points type of thing.
Right.
So I think the thing that does worry me a little bit is actually I feel like their O-line is really good. I feel like Frank Ragnow, who I loved coming out, is playing really well. Of course, you got Sewell at tackle. Like, they have some good O-linemen up front. And again, with a guy like Ragnow in there, that's why you want Quinnen Williams in your lineup. I think that they may end up just trying to run it. Like, they may try to ground and pound against the Jets in bad weather with a good O-line and a banged up Quinnen Williams. That's what the Jets have to guard against. Because I don't see Jared Goff and these receivers. And I don't know if I'm being overconfident or cocky, but I don't see these guys being good enough to put up any big numbers against Sauce and DJ Reed and that secondary. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and again, not to beat a dead horse, when you look at the matchups on paper, I immediately go towards Amon-Ra St. Brown and now Jameson Williams, who has emerged as of last week, versus DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, and the clash of those two. And then I look at the other side as well, and I look at their cornerbacks versus our wide receivers, and I see it as an advantage both ways. So it is going to come down to the trenches, and Detroit does have one of the best offensive lines. You're absolutely right. And behind them is a running game that's super strong. DeAndre Swift has kind of been hit or miss this year, but when you look at Jamal Williams, the running back they brought over from Green Bay, I had it right here. He has 14 touchdowns on the year. He's a goal line maniac. So
that's like more than his career. I think he had 13 in his career coming into the season.
Yep. So, and a lot of these are just, 1-2 yards out. So he's truly the workhorse. And I mean, maybe he is deserving of more carries. I'm not sure. I don't watch every game in depth, but you got 14 touchdowns and, 600 to 800 yards on the season. I think you should get a little bit more work. And that, two more stats about their offense, and I want to flip to their defense. Yards per game, they are fourth in the NFL with 376. and they're 5th in the NFL in points per game with 26.8. So the Jets' 2 losses, or the 2 biggest losses, I should say, were to the Bengals and the Vikings from a points perspective. Each team scored 27 on the Jets. No team has ever scored more than 27 in a losing effort. Obviously, Cleveland had 30. So it really looks like you're going to need to score 30 points on our defense, which is very hard to do in order to win this game. So I flip it back to the other side and I look at their defense and obviously what we have on offense, and that's Zach Wilson. And can Zach Wilson make it to the point where Detroit has to score 30 points against us? Can he throw for even, 180 and a touchdown, and then Bam Knight gets into the end zone and, something else happens where we get a couple field goals and we're able to just pull ahead or something like that. So I'm looking at their defensive line. I mentioned it earlier at the top, Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil. Aiden Hutchinson has the team lead with 7 sacks and 39 pressures. And I saw this on ESPN that they're one of the best teams against quick pass game. When the ball comes out in under 2.5 seconds, Detroit is first in the league in multiple analytic categories since week 6. Obviously, that's not to say analytics are going to determine the outcome of this game. But when you look at those numbers over a large enough sample size, like since week 6, when they started turning it around, they fired their defensive backs coach, Aubrey Pleasant. They started turning around in their secondary. So they've really come on strong in the quick pass game. And I think that's kind of been Zach Wilson's bread and butter. When you look at the Buffalo Bills game, every single pass came out in under 2.6 seconds or whatever the stat was. So it looks like it's kind of a clash of who's going to win when it comes to the Jets offense and the Lions defense. But like you said, I really don't have too much worry when it comes to the Jets defense versus the Lions offense. I know they have a bunch of production on their offense, but they don't really have that elite talent, like you said, that scares me enough to say, oh, somebody's going to finally throw for 250 yards on the Jets. No quarterback has done that this season. So it's really kind of a crazy stat when you look at it, and I don't think Jared Goff's going to be the one to break the mold. We have a couple minutes before 7:30. I wanted to get your prediction before we move into some draft talk here. So what you got for a score prediction?
Well, obviously, changed a lot
Yes.
once this news came down. I thought, I liked the Jets in a close win prior to the Mike White news. Zach Wilson, listen, until Zach Wilson gives me a reason to believe he can, throw a couple touchdowns, there's no reason to believe this team is going to score more than 13 or 16 points. And people can be angry at me for that, but look at the guy's production. I just don't see it. Again, the caveat is always, if the defense scores or if you get a turnover, you force a turnover and you get the ball at their 3-yard line, maybe that obviously that helps. But with Zach Wilson and having said Detroit doesn't score a ton of points, I'll say, I always feel like if you have a stagnant offense against a really good offense, then the good offense is going to wear you down and score some points late. So I'm going to say 24-13 Detroit.
Okay. Yep. That's similarly to where I was. I mean, like you said, my score was a little bit different when Mike White was still the quarterback. I had it at 27-21, the Jets actually winning this one. Now, like you said, I think it's just going to be a lot closer. Like I'm now leaning like 21-20, like really that close of a game. I don't see how you can confidently say the Jets could win. They should win this game. Realistically, they have more talent. They're not the hotter team. Obviously, the Lions have won 5 of their last 6. But when you look at it on paper, even in their losses, the Jets are playing way better than they were with Zach Wilson with Mike White. So the expectations are kind of in flux every week as a Jets fan. It's really an unfortunate place to be when the season has had so many high point turns to it, and even after all the injuries, you're able to hang in all these games. You lost 3 key injuries to Quinnen, Corey, and Mike, and now, 2 of the 3 of them aren't even going to play in the game, and one is basically on 1.5 legs. So it's really unfortunate, but it does affect everything that goes into the score. I'm going to say, 21-20, and it really can't get much closer than a coin flip. The Jets were 1.5 favorites this morning. Then the news broke, and now I believe they're up to +1.5 or +2 in most sports books. So it goes to show what people think of Zach Wilson. And until we see otherwise, it's it's kind of what we got to do is sit and wait. I mean, he had 2 implosion games against the New England Patriots, and other than that, he was kind of able to get by. And I don't think this is a defense that you should strive to just get by on. This is a defense that you should really strive to take advantage of, because they are bottom 6 in a couple categories defensively, including points per game. I said they allowed 26.8 points per game, or they scored 26.8. They allowed 26.7. So it's a 0.1 difference. They're in neck and neck ball games. So that's kind of what the Jets need to get back to, a fourth quarter game where they can get back and dominate. I know you said offenses that are better, they stay hot into the fourth quarter or get hot in the fourth quarter. Hopefully that's what Zach Wilson can do. Everybody wants to talk about that fourth quarter in Pittsburgh. So let's have a fourth quarter in MetLife. And by the way, I know you don't care. They're wearing all green. So green for the first time this season. Hopefully it gives them some luck. With that, we are going to transition into our draft segment. I'm going to let you go first. I don't have players to like really go in depth on. I just have a couple shout outs that I want to give during this down period of college ball. So I want you to go first with your prospects.
So 2 guys both on the same team, because I tuned in to watch one in particular, and another guy jumped out at me. One guy, the better known of the 2, at least in draft circles, Appalachian State edge rusher Nick Hampton. He wreaks havoc off the edge. Great get off, great bend, gets to the quarterback. Believe he forced a couple fumbles in the games that I watched. I watched 3 games, 3.5 App State games. So he's a guy who, again, I've heard his name a fair bit leading up to the draft. Watched him last year as well. And liked him. I believe I got some highlights of him last year. I don't have any clips ready tonight because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do the show, to be honest. But Nick Hampton, Appalachian State edge rusher, is a guy to keep an eye on. And then on the other side of the ball, Cooper Hodges, App State offensive tackle. Like I said, I watched him against North Carolina. I watched Texas A&M. Those are like the 2 bigger schools. And he looks fantastic. Like I don't know. In draft circles, I don't know where he's viewed as a prospect, like what round he's going to go in. I'm not saying he's going to be a round 1 guy, but he just won consistently, and he did a good job in the run game and the pass game. So he looks like a guy who can kind of get it done, whether you're going ground and pound or you're trying to go through the air. I think he looked better as a run blocker, but he looked like plenty capable in pass protection, and of course that's something that teams are going to work on, and you hope, as we say, these are all projections. You expect guys to continue improving as they, once they get into the league. So he's a guy that, and I'm kind of going to start watching a lot more tackles, because it's just, that's where the Jets are right now. They're going to need to draft at least 1. I sent out a tweet the other day about how nice it would be if guys got healthy, and I included Becton in that, and people still get upset by it. Listen, I understand the frustration with Mekhi Becton, but Mekhi Becton is still an insanely talented player who is still under contract, and you don't just let him walk out the door because he might not be healthy. Like, you do the same thing you did last year. You get him rehabbed, you get him into camp, and you get him on the field and see how he does. And if he doesn't get hurt, then he's a starter, and that's that. So you draft a tackle at some point, possibly draft one who can also play guard, or you just draft one knowing that as long as he pans out, AVT goes back to guard. Like, we don't know what the plan is with AVT. Does he go right tackle and Becton on the left if they're healthy? Because that'd be a hell of a combo. But if you draft a tackle, then that gives you flexibility with AVT. So no matter whether Becton's healthy or not, though, they need a tackle. And drafting one doesn't mean, oh, well, now you've got Dwayne Brown under contract and Mekhi Becton in camp and a first-round pick. Okay, fine. Somebody plays guard. Like, you get the best 5 on the field, but you have to address offensive tackle. So that's why I wanted to bring up and mention Cooper Hodges, because he looked like a really good player. So he's one to watch.
Yeah, and I think at this point we see what the needs are, and we kind of hone in on those 2 or 3 big major positional needs, and we focus on them. I talked about 2 edge players last week, and I was going to come on and talk about Jared Verse, but I didn't have enough time to fully pull up everything on him. But he's a 6'4", 250 edge rusher from Florida State. I believe he transferred from a D2 or D3 school. So
yeah, he's like a really small school.
Yeah. So he's one of the many Florida State guys. I think I talked about Jamie Robinson and Fabian Lovett before just accepting Senior Bowl invites. I don't believe Jared Verse is eligible for Senior Bowl, but if he was, he certainly would be there with his teammates. And I think he's looked at as one of the better edge rushers in this class. Obviously, Will Anderson is the number one guy, but I try not to look at rankings, and I think at this point in the season I need to start because I need to start getting a feel for where other people like these players. But I've seen Jared Verse as high as, edge 2 on some lists. So it's kind of crazy to think that, a small school guy with 1 year of, FCS or FBS, play can really do this. But then I look at a guy like Jermaine Johnson and I'm like, well, it'd be cool to pair him up and have 2 Florida State edge rushers. I mean, I'm not going to say edge is a pressing need for the Jets, but you can never have enough. And I think Rob Saleh has said he'd dress 10 or more if he could. So Jared Verse is just a guy I wanted to shout out there, put him out there into the world. But what I did want to shout out was news came out today that 2 Alabama stars who are likely to play to be drafted, number 1 and number 2 overall, and Bryce Young and Will Anderson, their quarterback and their edge rusher, respectively, they're opting to play in their Sugar Bowl. You don't really see this with a lot of prospects that are about to declare. They generally choose to opt out of their bowl game. They're like, why would I play a meaningless game to, hurt my draft stock? And I'm not saying this is going to start a trend, but the fact that the number 1 and number 2 potentially drafted guys are staying back this year, one, it says a lot about Nick Saban and the program that he runs at Alabama to just get guys like that, blue chip guys to stay back for one more game. And they're not even in the playoffs. So that says a hell of a lot, but it says a lot about them.
That's the most surprising part to me. That's like, if they would have made the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me as much. The fact that,
right,
like for some teams, this is a magical season. For Alabama, it's a disappointment. Like it's
absolutely
a letdown year, and they're hanging around. Like that's awesome. Kudos to them.
Yeah. So obviously I just wanted to shout them out and give them, a clean bill of health for this game because it is going to be the last time they step on a college football field, but that will be really cool for them. And then I did want to, give a shout out and condolences to Texas Tech, Washington State, and Mississippi State's football programs. We're not, I'm not a huge follower of college football, but I think it's impossible to talk about college football and not talk about Mike Leach, legendary head coach. He passed away this week. He was the current head coach at Mississippi State and the former head coach at Texas Tech and Washington State. He was the air raid guy. Cliff Kingsbury was, brought up under Mike Leach, a couple other current head coaches in the Big 12 and Big 10. So Mike Leach was a guy that, his halftime and post-game press conferences were always the best. And they were always the best because they weren't about football. And I think it's so cool to see a coach in the heat of battle, like walking off the field before even addressing his team in the locker room at halftime, answering questions. And then right after the game, he's answering questions that aren't even related to football, whether it's, weddings or Halloween candy or what have you. So Mike Leach was a really cool guy. And I just wanted to give a shout out to those schools because it's unfortunate when you lose guys like this. And they are still going to play their bowl game, which I thought was really cool. I don't know what their plans are at interim coach, but yeah, Mike Leach deserved a shout out on our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I can't even remember the context, but we talked about him like 4 days before it happened.
Yeah, we did.
I can't, and we were just saying what a great personality. I can't even remember how it came up because it's so random. But we were both like, "Oh yeah, Mike Leach. You love listening to those post game interviews." And as Brian Kulich has in the chat there, he was a treat, man. He was a great coach to listen to him talk. And I can't imagine being a media member. Like that's got to be like the dream assignment. Like you're covering the team that Mike Leach coaches. So yeah, condolences, man. He was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. But just real quick on your prospects, 2 App State guys, we're gonna have to clip that out and tag Daniel Jeremiah on Twitter because because he's a former App State alum and he always talks about them. So it's cool that you pointed him out. And like I said, I haven't looked at all the rankings yet, so that's something I really need to dive into to find out at least a ballpark of where these guys are going because offensive line is a real struggle for me to pinpoint where they're going to go. I feel like every team evaluates them super differently based on size, arm length, and what they want, guard center or guard tackle, what swing tackle. So it's always fun. Offensive tackles, offensive linemen in general are just hard for me to evaluate, but I'm glad you were able to bring those up. Any last words on the game or Mike White or, draft anything?
No, this is your time, Zach. Like, people can call me a hater or a doubter, but all I'm doing is talking about how he's playing. You know, And anyone who followed us on Twitter, they know you and I went back and forth pre-draft, and I was 100% team Zach, and I supported the guy for as long as I could until it got to the point where it's like, okay, he may be good one day, but right now he is what's holding this team back. And that's why he needs to sit. So the team did the right thing and sat him. Um, I I've not said a lot of nice things about the way he's played, but that's because he has not played well. I want him to play well. I want him to throw a million touchdowns this week, but it's hard to imagine a guy playing as poorly as he has been turning it around after 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And that was actually a question posed to Robert Saleh, is how much can a quarterback change his mechanics in 3 weeks? And the look that Saleh gave was kind of like I guess we'll
Don't
see,
ask me
right?
that question.
Yeah, I can't answer that accurately until we see.
Mhm.
So you can only hope that everything that he's saying to the media in terms of finding the fun in football again and learning how to be a quarterback and just doing what's best for the team and the organization to win the ball game. I think if you can take all those words and just put it into your drop back and keep your toes pointed where you actually want to throw the ball, I think we'll have some success. And it's a must win time. So playoffs begin now. I think fans have been clamoring for the Jets to make the playoffs for a long time. And this is basically a playoff atmosphere. 4 games left. You can kind of afford to drop one, but I would say no. I think you got to win them
No.
all. And even still, that's a prayer. So for Glenn Naughton, you can follow him on Twitter at AceFan23. Be sure to follow his draft account. It's booming with draft videos of prospects at Jets Picks, at Jets PICKS. We're going to be any video we show on here moving forward is certainly going to show up on his feed at one point or another. Tons of prospects, and not even just big name guys. He has guys. You're like a mini Emery Hunt with the guys that you pull out of nowhere. You'll send me a kick returner, and I'm like, oh wow, got to add him to the database. So it's nice to
Yes.
have all these small school guys from you. You can follow me on Twitter at Tereman. Make sure you're following us at JetNation on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. If you want to leave us chat questions in the comment section, we'll certainly look at them over the next few weeks. And if the Jets don't make the playoffs that first week, we'll definitely do a mailbag, but I think we should do a playoff mailbag almost regardless. So 4 more weeks, it's an uphill climb, but I think the Jets can do it. Let's hope Zach Wilson's ready for the opportunity. And until next time, let's go Jets.